So this is my first flight trying my new Walksnail HD FPV system. Didn't really know what to expect, so I brought it out where I could fly over this field just to make sure that I had a safe place to ditch it if I needed to, and to just see what kind of range I could get and see how the picture really was. I first flew out fairly close to get a feel for it, get a feel for how it felt in the goggles and how the airplane was flying. A lot of the CG had been modified and parts had been moved to make everything fit, and so I wanted to get a feel for how it was going to fly and react first before I started checking the range of everything. You can see it was a really nice calm morning. I got out to the field a little bit later than I had planned, but it was still very calm, which was pleasing for me to do my test flight. And as you can see on the screen there, that it's showing like a 1.5 mile-an-hour wind, which is basically nothing. And the airplane is just flying nice and smooth. This footage is not stabilized at all, and you can see that it's still flying really smooth. I'm really happy with the on-screen display, all of the digits and everything. The HD version makes all of that just really nice and crisp and easy to read, and I really like the font style. So now you can see I've kind of pointed myself towards Kennecott, and I wanted to start testing the range on it a little bit. An interesting thing that happens is I didn't lose range on the goggles. My video feed was coming in solid, but here in just a second I'm going to lose my receiver feed. Right there you can see it's saying that it's going to return to home, and it's fail-safed, and so there's a hard turn as it's taken over the airplane, and it's turned around and it's going to fly back home. This was kind of surprising to me. I've flown a lot farther away than that, and so then there for a second I moved the sticks and got control back, so my receiver reconnected, and then it lost it again for a second, and then I was able to regain control again. But I was kind of confused as to why I would lose my receiver connection there. But so anyway, I flew back towards myself for a little bit, and it seemed like the connection was solid again. So I thought, well, I'll point towards Kennecott again and just see if I can get any more distance out of it. One thing to note is the airplane is cruising at a much lower throttle setting than it was before. I mean, a big part of that is because I don't have a big GoPro stuck to the top of the airplane, blocking the wind and all that extra weight. I mean, right here I'm cruising at 38% throttle, and before I was cruising well above 50 and sometimes closer to 60% throttle just to be at a cruising speed. So the reduction in weight and the reduction in all of that big drag was a huge improvement. So you can see now I'm getting farther out there, 0.8384 of a mile. I was really enjoying this view. Having the digital view is just amazing. So right there you can see that again it fail-safed and turned me around, and that wasn't a video issue. That was again my receiver. Now you can see though that the bit rate does drop really low, and right there that was a video glitch. And we're at a mile away at the moment, but you can see, and that's why it keeps circling around. I was trying to cancel that return to home, and then it would fail again and try and return to home, and I tried to cancel again and it would fail and return to home again. So I finally gave up, and I'm just letting it fly itself back towards home. Canceled the return to home, and now I'm back to flying it myself again. Being that it's quite a bit lighter and less drag, not having the GoPro on there, it gains altitude a lot quicker, so I had to kind of force myself to bring it in closer to the ground. Flying close to the ground is a lot of fun, though, with the digital image on there. You can just see everything so clearly, and so the fear of getting too close isn't quite there like it was in the analog goggles. It's easier to tell how high off the ground you are. I felt like I could tell pretty good with analog, but the digital makes it just that much better. Right here I pass a antelope, which I didn't even notice at the time, but it was down in the bottom right of that screen there. Now I'm lining up to come in for a landing, and I'm lining up a lot lower than I normally would, and a big part of that was just because I was enjoying all the detail that I could see in the ground, and the comfort I felt being able to fly that low. So I felt that was pretty successful for a first test flight. So I went into my flight controller and I modified the auto launch throttle setting because it was nosing over really hard, and I lowered it, and so you can see now my auto throttle is at 69%, and I felt like that was a much smoother auto launch. It didn't nose down as hard as it normally does. As a matter of fact, I don't think it nosed down hardly at all. It had occurred to me while I was on the ground that maybe my video transmit power was low, but then I forgot to change it while I was on the ground. So here you'll see I'm going to put the airplane into a loiter or a position hold, and so the airplane's going to just fly a circle here for a minute while I fiddle with the settings in the goggles and I increase my video transmit power so that I can test and see if I can get a little bit more range out of it. So then right here you can see I've turned that loiter off, and now I've just got myself headed towards Kennecott again to see if I can get better distance before my video starts to lag out. One thing that isn't very apparent when you're just standing on the ground is how much the ground slopes up towards the mountain here from where I'm sitting. You'll see that the altitude number continues to increase, but I don't think I gain any, and I actually may lose actual above ground altitude. By the time I get out here, I think I'm getting closer and closer to the ground, even though I've been climbing the whole time, just because the ground slopes up towards the mountain. So you see we've made it past a mile anyway, so we're doing better than the previous attempt. My RSSI, or the link quality to the receiver, is struggling a little bit, which I don't notice until it fail-safes on me. I'm just watching the distance and I'm kind of just enjoying the view. And so you can see we're just about to hit 1.5 miles, and it's just so neat to be able to look at everything. I'm looking down at the trees and just so excited with how well everything is working and how clear of an image. So right here I start debating, well, do I go over the road or over their parking lot, or do I turn around? And so I decide, well, I should start to turn around, and as I did that, it fail-safed on me and decided to turn itself around. So I moved the sticks and I canceled that return to home, and then there you see again it returned to home again on itself, and my receiver link just was failing like crazy on me. And so here I've got no link again, and so it's spinning me around trying to return to home on me again. But one thing to note is the video signal's awesome. I was still getting great video. The bit rate seemed to struggle a little bit. It was getting lower, but I never lost my video feed. And so I was super happy with how the video was working. But at this point, I'm pretty confused as to why my receiver is failing, because in 1.5 miles, that's not nearly as far as I have taken it, and I never had a receiver issue before. So again, I gave up on trying to fly it home, and I'm just letting the return to home bring it back right now. And I think I even pulled the goggles off for a minute, and I was looking at my radio, all the telemetry information on my radio screen, trying to see if I could get any indication as to why my receiver kept fail-safing on me. I couldn't tell while I was looking at the screen or anything, and so I just let it fly for a bit. So now we're under 1 mile, and so I decided to take control again. It seemed like the receiver was holding on, and so I took over and decided to fly a little bit. But you can notice the altitude showing 440 feet there, and I'm not really that high above the ground because of the way it slopes. Just notice there that it returned to home again on me there for a second, and then I was able to cancel it, and I'm back to flying again. So at this point I was getting a little frustrated. I wasn't quite sure why my receiver kept fail-safing on me. The weather was so nice, there was no wind, and so the flying was just excellent. And I was trying to decide if I should continue to fly and keep pushing it, or if I should just land and try and troubleshoot the issue. What I kind of decided to do was just goof off and enjoy the great flying weather and just do it kind of nearby. And so you'll see I'm doing a fast low run along the fence line here, and I just kind of fly around and get a feel for how things come to me in the digital screen. I was having a blast. I mean, I wasn't able to push it very far because the receiver kept blinking at me, or my radio kept beeping at me that I was losing connection, and so I couldn't go very far, and that was getting a little frustrating. But I was having so much fun just watching the screen and just everything being so crisp and clear that I was really enjoying myself. Right there, we actually just flew past a hawk, and we'll actually fly past it a couple times because it just hangs out right on that post. And again, this footage is not stabilized. This is just the view that I was getting. There's no stabilization to it. So on this post just on the right of us, you'll see there's a hawk just sitting right there on that post, and it didn't seem to care at all that I was flying around right next to it. But I was really enjoying just cruising along. It's actually a lot of fun to just fly low and kind of fast. You'll see my throttle percent is up at 64%, and so I'm keeping a little bit extra speed on me just in case something goes a little funny. I've got enough speed to kind of climb out. And then right here I noticed my shadow, and so I thought, oh, I'm going to try and chase my shadow a little bit. The angle from the sun made it a little tricky because it was just barely at the bottom of my view this whole time, but it was still kind of fun to just chase the shadow across the ground. So now we're coming up on, and I didn't even notice them until I got a bit closer, but we're coming up on a herd of antelope. You can see them there. They're just about in the center of the screen there. And here they start to move. There's some pretty good sized bucks in this group. So I thought that was pretty neat, and I thought, oh, well, I'm going to circle back around and see if I can spot them again, and then I have my receiver go to fail-safe again on me, which reminded me of the frustration I was having earlier. So you see, I did quickly cancel the return to home. At that point, I decided I'd pushed my luck enough. It was time to just bring it in and figure out what was causing my issue. It again climbs so much better with the reduced weight and not all that drag, so when I came back over here to line up for a landing, I had to do a couple circles around to lose that altitude before I came in. You can also see the wind has increased. We're up to 4 miles an hour now instead of the 2 or under 2 that we were at when we began, but that's still, you can't even feel it, and so it's still just nice and smooth to fly in. And coming in slightly below the top of that tree for my landing, just because I can see everything so clear, I felt more comfortable with coming in low. So I took it home and I did a bunch of research and trying to troubleshoot what was causing my receiver issue, and tore apart my module on my radio and checked my antennas and all that. And I decided, after finding nothing obviously wrong, I decided that maybe my receiver antenna was just too close to the video transmitter antenna. So I made a new mount and I moved my receiver antenna to back onto the tail of the aircraft. And so this is later in the day, I went back out just to test that. Something to note here, as I mentioned earlier, that video was not stabilized. This video has been stabilized and it still looks really rough. And that's because it was just so windy and so rough. The wind reading on here right now is like just over 3 miles an hour, but that's not accurate. It's going to increase as the airplane has to fight the wind. But it was very rough, probably the roughest thing I've ever really flown in. I really wanted to figure out my receiver issue. So anyway, I've got it in the air. I'm up at 71% throttle because I just really want to push it out and get my distance as quick as I can so I can watch my link quality up in the top right corner there and see if moving that antenna farther away was the solution. And so far here we're at 0.7 of a mile, and that link quality is bouncing right there. It got down to 80 for just a split second, but it's staying quite high so far. And so I'm just going to keep pushing it out. I just want to see, I made it a mile the first time, and then I started losing it, and I made it like a mile and a half, and so I just want to see if I can make it farther than that, see if maybe moving those antennas was the solution. But as you can see in the screen, it was a bumpy ride, and it was even more jittery for me in the goggles. Like I say, I ran the video through some stabilization to soften a lot of that, because trying to play it back on the computer, it was giving me a headache. It was so jittery. But this is as stabilized as the software could get it. So here we are at a mile and a half, and this is where on that second attempt I thought, well, maybe I should turn around rather than go over the road and over the parking lot over here. But at this point I really wanted to know if I had solved my receiver issue. And my link quality is showing 100, 97, 99. So I was thinking, well, I've got to push it. I really want to know what I can do if I solve that. And so I'm just continuing on. So we're approaching 2 miles here. And so right there we hit 2 miles of distance away. And that link quality is still holding strong. So at this point I'm starting to think, okay, I probably solved my receiver issue, and so I'm starting to relax a little bit, and now I'm thinking, oh, check it out, I'm getting so close to the mountain. This is really neat. But again, I'm also getting just hammered by the wind, and I'm thinking about my battery, and I'm flying not really with the wind but not against it either, and so not quite sure how it's going to affect my return. And so while I have a ton of battery, I didn't want to push it. And so here I'm at 2.5 miles, and that link quality is still at 98%. And my video quality is also holding on really strong. You'll see here it does start to dip off a little bit here and there. And I was, my directional antennas that I had on my headset, I was looking in the wrong direction. And so that was kind of my fault. I was probably 20 degrees off of where I should have been pointing my head, and so that's part of why the video drops off a little bit here and there. But so anyway, I made it to the edge of the mountain there, and I decided that was a good enough of a test for now. I can certainly go farther, but the wind was just, it was really beating me up. So you can see I've turned around and I'm headed back home. So it's showing that I'm over 1,000 feet right now. Now that's saying that I'm over 1,000 feet from where I launched, but because this ground slopes up so much towards the mountain, I'm not more than maybe 200 feet, 250 feet off of the actual ground level here. Moving the antenna was the solution. You can see I've still got a good solid connection. It never dropped to anything that was not acceptable. And so I'm headed into home now. And at this point, my heart's kind of racing and my head's starting to get a little fuzzy just because of the sheer jitteriness of the whole flight. But I'm also super excited that I solved my link issue, and that I know things are going to be reliable later on. And I sure do love the HD. It's so neat to be able to see all of the little details and the fence line and everything. It makes it so nice to come in and land, and just, it's so much fun.